Hi there, Tom. You all right?
Hi, how's it going? You all right, Andy?
Yeah, we've set this up. This is we're going to call this drive talking. Boom.
Yeah.
I think it's 5 seconds. Literally took us 5 seconds before we started. We're both freelance journalists. Tom, do you want to introduce yourself about what kind of stuff you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, so basically,
Fair to ask you.
yeah, no problem at all. I'm writing for
Definitely.
Classic Car Weekly mostly at the moment, while I am doing my Masters in Broadcast Journalism at the University of Central Lancashire. And when I'm not doing that, I'm trying to restore my dad's MG Magnet ZA, so that's why I'm here. And what about you, Andy?
Well, I like the way you say you're trying to restore it. I
Yes.
never buy anything I think I can try and restore. Yeah, I'm a bit of an old git. So I'm a kind of freelance motoring journalist. I would say motoring journalist, more motoring writer, because I don't have your training, Tom. So fell into it a bit by accident. So I'm a freelance writer. Classic Car Weekly is one of them. I've done stuff for Volksworld, Octane, stuff like that. But I also do voiceovers for a number of TV shows. The one possibly somebody might have heard of is the ITV4 MUNDIAL, which is every Sunday on ITV4 or ITV Hub. We have the last 5 episodes on. So that's this week. It's at 6:45 on Sunday for a quick plug. Every week it's about the same time, but they keep changing it. But yeah, we thought we'd get together, didn't we, and kind of do something which I think pretty much everybody else is trying to do, which is to kind of just keep things going a little bit.
Yeah.
And maybe we can keep something going individually or together at some point in the future. But I was thinking about just discussing a week in cars, if you know what I mean. So we're not in cars, but we're in lockdown. But kind of we think about what's going on at the moment in terms of classic cars and the scene and what's on telly, what's in the press. So what should we talk about first, Tom?
Yeah, well, the
What an
freshest
idea.
the freshest in my mind is probably this week's Salvage Hunters with the TD and the really nice Williams Clio as well. So should we start at that point?
Yeah, and I think the thing about Salvage Hunters Classic Cars, which is on Quest, I think
Quest,
it
it is
is, which
Quest, yeah.
is Discovery Quest. The thing about it, I think, is that they do tend to have quite a few cars which are a little bit off the radar. When you get, I mean, Wheeler Dealers does a lot of cars, and they do have stuff that's off the radar. But I think even more so, I think some of that's coming from Paul Cowland, who co-presents it with Drew Pritchard, and the other week they had a Fiat, a rare Fiat, and they've had a number of weird stuff, weird cars that are kind of a little bit off the wall. Things that you wouldn't normally think of restoring, or even just looking through the classifieds to find. And the MG TD turbo diesel. It's not a turbo diesel, is it?
No. It'd be interesting if you tried to do that.
Yeah, I actually have a friend of mine who does have one of those, and it's got a Volvo V18 engine in it. And apparently it was converted in the States because when they stopped running well, the Americans didn't bother and just chucked in anything they could find. But yeah, the thing about the TD, I never really kind of liked them that much because the earlier cars, the earlier MGs, they had the bigger wire wheels. You can imagine somebody who was a Spitfire pilot, driving one of those from an air base or something like that. But the TD, the wheels always seem a little bit off, a little bit small, a little bit out of proportion. So they're a bit, which is interesting because what I thought about what they did with it, they did something which did make it more appealing, I think. What was your take on it?
I contradict myself all the time because sometimes I've got my feet firmly in the purist camp. Keep everything original, and then every now and again I'm just like, as long as a car's on the road, it's fine. Just like save them. So I was torn with this MG because I mean they're not ultra rare. There's about 1,000-ish left knocking about in the UK. I didn't like the green and the black two-tone paintwork, and I really was against the grille at first because I'm very much like the TD grille for me is the vertical slats. But at the same time,
just make a point on that is that the other thing about those TDs, you always know they've been restored incorrectly.
Yeah.
If the grille doesn't match the hood,
yeah.
Match the upholstery. And I thought they were going to go down that route. If they'd changed the colour of the grille as it was, then to a purist who was wanting to buy
like
it,
that at one point.
Yeah.
But at the same time, hey, it looked pretty cool. Someone's probably going to buy it and enjoy it, so that's a good thing. And if if there's 10 of those cars left, I'd have been like, oh my god. But the fact that there's enough going around to make you realise that actually it's okay. Apologies for him barking. I think someone just put something through.
Thought it was you.
Yeah. So on that front, actually, I'm okay with it. But at first, I was a bit like, ugh. So I think the only thing for me was the paintwork. I think I'm not the fan of the green and black together. But yeah, other than that, I think it just about got away with it in the end.
I think it reminded me of the more recent Morgans, where they've gone for the steel wheel, or they're probably an aluminium wheel. And what I'd hoped they would have done with it to finish it off on the program is put maybe some little brass center caps over the hubs, because they were left exposed. Not a full cap, just a little small cap, just over the hub on the outside of those wheels, and it can just set it off a little bit more maybe. But we're being picky. We're thinking about programs that actually have a budget.
Yeah, that's true. And also they're trying to sell it at a profit as well. And you don't know those little details, the more they build up massively. And you do have to, when you're restoring a car, as you probably well know, or even not restoring but working on a car, you do have to make those cuts every now and again because they just mount up.
So I think that's, in terms of the budget kind of side of things, a lot of people forget about that when they criticise wheeler dealers and when they criticise the other shows. It's, well, that TV show has probably a budget of 15 to 20 grand for the car. And that includes parts finding, sort of import costs, and loads of stuff which we don't normally think about. Yes, but I think it was a good show. The Clio Williams he did, that was quite impressive.
Well, a great example of that was when I said before about worrying about the TD and how many were left. The Clio obviously is an ultra rare example of a car they were doing, and they did that in the way that I'd have said about the MG. If there were fewer of them, they've gone, right, okay, we realise what we've got here is special, let's not mess with it. And that's when they were measuring the stickers to make sure everything was right, making sure getting the parts 3D printed instead of just bunging anything in. And that sort of showed that the program's got that balance where every now and again it's okay to do stuff like go off the beaten track with a car because you're not spoiling the sort of heritage of it for somebody else. But with the Clio, it's really, really important to keep that because it's such a rare car, and I think they did that really well.
Yeah, and I think they're just coming into that realm now. About 5 years ago, there was a lot, quite a few around that you'd find were still being used on a daily basis, and now they're coming to that collector's territory. And I really like seeing how Paul Cowland got the measurements precise on those decals. Although, can I just point out that I hate it when people call them decals. Decals.
Yeah.
I always thought it was decals.
I thought it's like decals, but if people want to correct us, that's
It's like patina. It's like patina and patina, isn't it? Because I remember in my old Volkswagen days in sort of the late 80s, early 90s, people talked about patina, and now it's gone to I think it's the Americanism is sort of the change. Is patina.
Patina,
Makes it like a nice word, but it sounds a bit better than patina. But
the first time I heard it was an ex-colleague said about. I used to go to work at my first journalism job in a really battered, rubber bumpered midget. It was probably most enthusiasts would go, "Oh my god, it was a horrible car in a lot of sense," but I loved it. And one of his older colleagues went, "Oh, it's got lovely patina," and I was like, "What? I thought it was." But anyway, so I just thought maybe I was wrong saying patina, but I'm glad you've said that.
You say potato, I say tomato, and all that kind of stuff. What is it?
But if you pronounce a word wrong, maybe you've learned it by reading. So there's something to be said for that.
Exactly. Yeah. So what else? Any other observations this week? Because there's a few things that we can talk about, which I was going to bring up. We're going to have a quick shufty through some of the motoring press as well. Just no bias at all.
No bias whatsoever. Please buy papers. Keep us in work.
But it's a strange world because we've got to remember there's a lot of events being called off. We've got businesses which rely on the classic car industry and people using classic cars that are losing money daily, particularly those events we just mentioned where they've had, giving money back, or they've had money put aside for events, and those things aren't going ahead now. the big news of this week, which is on the front of Classic Car Weekly and most press, motoring press this week, is of course is Sterling Moss. And I remember going to the NEC, to a classic car show about, it was a big classic car show at the NEC about 5 years ago now. And it came past me, and a guy in front of me said, "My God, I've just been I've just been overtaken by Sir Sterling Moss. Wow," kind of thing, because he was going around on his scooter. But yeah, it's sad when we lose these people, and it makes us think about the heritage of stuff. I live not far from Aintree, which was home to the Grand Prix in the 50s.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
You're a little bit further away towards the other side of Lancashire, but the fact that Sterling Moss and those greats were sort of on your doorstep, it makes you think, really. But so we've lost a legend. The other things I was noticing in Classic Car Weekly is there's a kind of a feeling that it's that thought of, should we be buying classics at the moment or not buying classics? It's unusual that. Go on.
It's a strange one, isn't it? Because you've obviously got the hobby there, and you're an enthusiast, but at the same time, I don't think you could maybe argue buying a car at the minute you definitely can't argue buying a car at the minute is an essential journey. And you're putting people at risk by being in close proximity, this, that, and the other. I know a few dealers have said you can buy online and we'll deliver once restrictions are lifted, which I think is a really good way to support the industry, really. If you have seen a car you like, obviously it's different when you can't see a car in person, so to speak, because you want to go around and have a good feel under the wheel arches and ideally have a drive. But it's good to see that there's some ways that people are still managing to do it while staying safe. But I do think at the minute, for me personally as well, that certainly perusing the adverts at the minute and keeping an eye on stuff that maybe, I like the look of that when we can go out again safely, is probably the way a lot of people will be looking at it at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I know auction houses are still trying to do some auctions based on what the stock they've got and trying to shift some of that. There's still ads all over eBay. There's stuff in the back of these magazines as well. There's stuff that's for sale. Another thing we thought we'd sort of talk about at some point is stuff that we've perhaps learned this week. There's a wealth of information here about the Austin Healey Sprite, and the fact that if you wanted to buy a Frog Eye, they're twice as much as a Sprite.
They are beautiful, the Frog Eyes, aren't they? But I'm a big fan of Sprites. But again, because I'm a fan of the midget, though, obviously I will be, because they're essentially the same car with a different badge, really, aren't they? In a lot of respects. But yeah, I just think they're beautiful and a lot of fun apparently as well. I mean, I've only ever driven a rubber bumpered midget, so obviously very different ball game for a Sprite or an early midget. But yeah, they're definitely a wish list item for me.
I've driven a couple of midgets, and they're surprisingly not quite a nice car to drive over an MG. And you get that long bonnet feel on them as well. Even on a midget, even though they're meant to be small, you do get that feeling of the point in the front of the car with those two lamps at the front and the wings at the front, just kind of framing your view of the road. But I think the Sprite itself, we're talking about, there's one on eBay at the moment for an Austin Healey Sprite. I think it's about $8,000. And I think the values in Classic Car Weekly this week talk about something like $5,000 to $8,000, something like that.
Here we go.
Whereas a Frog Eye is about 20.
A good one, it says 5 to 8, which I think is probably about right.
And it's interesting to think about the values of the Sprite, because it kind of made me think about what are the values of cars going to be after all this is kind of back to normal, whatever normal is. In this week's Classic Car Weekly, again, we're talking about auction prices being still high for some of the more desirable cars. And I think we always talk about there's the high-end cars, the big collectors' cars, 200 grand plus kind of cars. Then you get sort of the middle to higher end, and then you can get another subsection, and even get down to cars under $5,000, entry classics. But you do wonder, how things are going to be shaken up in terms of values in about 2 or 3 months' time. Yeah. So I mean, I've got VW Iltis 4-wheel drive off-road kind of thing, and I've been doing bits and pieces to it. But noticed today I've run out of paint, so I'm now thinking, can I go back and get some more paint? No, I can't, because of course those places are shut down. I'm trying to look into whether I can get it mail order, but I've got a specific code which I wanted to use. So at the moment, I'm a bit of a dead loss with mine. How's it affecting you?
Pretty badly, actually. So basically what's happened with me is about a week before lockdown was announced, I got a wiring loom for my Z8 mail ordered, no problem. And I opened it, looked at the box and thought, I can't fit this. I'm just going to make a mess of this. So I phoned a garage near me that very, very kindly have done all the welding work on my magnet. And they've got a couple of people there who know what they're doing with these sorts of things. So I said, yeah, we'll take it in. We'll fit your wiring loom and bring it back. Right, great, no problem. And before they managed to start work on it, the car's there with them now, and then lockdown announced. So it's just basically, I can't even polish it because it's there at the moment. So it's one of those things. It's all right, it happens, but that's the frustration for me at the minute. I can't even do the bits I can do, like for example, refitting the bumpers, sorting out the door alignments, that kind of thing. Because I just can't safely go and get the car at the moment. So I'm waiting now for until whenever it's open.
Is a bit poo. Just something I want to just recommend to people. If you haven't seen it already, there's we haven't talked about this before, but there's a great show on YouTube called Barn Find Hunter. It's supported by Haggerty, and there's a guy called Tom Cotter. So a bit of a recommendation for Barn Find Hunter, if you can catch that. Have you ever seen that at all?
I've not seen it yet, so I'll be following your recommendation as well and jumping on that.
Well, have a look at that, Barn Find Hunter, and he's an interesting guy, and he goes around to it's all around the United States, and he goes around to yards where there's cars lying around and that kind of stuff, and he basically goes through the yards and tries to evaluate how good they would be as a restoration and this kind of stuff. So that's quite cool. And in terms of other shows on this week, we've had Car S.O.S. last night did the Fergie Tractor.
Tractor S.O.S. last night, wasn't it? Yeah. That was good fun, actually. It was nice to see something different on there.
It was good to see the tractor. I mean, I think Fuzz Townsend was asking on social media what are the kind of vehicles people would want to see on the show. Obviously, it's called Car S.O.S, not Tractor S.O.S or Bus S.O.S or anything like that. But I think Fuzz Townsend said in Classic Car Weekly, he said that he's very keen to see a bus on the show, an Innovator bus, because I think he started off as an apprentice bus mechanic in the Midlands. But yeah, I don't know what you do with a bus though. I mean, a bus pretty I don't know, difficult to restore. There's the frame, the aluminium, the panels, all that kind of stuff, and the coach work on them before you even get to the mechanics and the chassis.
It goes back to that budget thing we were talking about that people, I don't think, always aware of, or at the forefront of people's minds, is these programs do have a budget. And when you consider what a car would cost, the quality of the work they do as well, you would assume you're going into the tens of thousands, probably the high tens of thousands in some cases with some of the cars that they've done. So a bus and sourcing parts as well, I just think budget-wise that would be a producer's nightmare, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of bus preservation places all over the country. Normally on airfields, because you need somewhere big to keep stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think with about a bus, it's a bit like restoring an ambulance or something like that. What are you going to do with it? But there are bus people out there. I know Nick Larkin, that writes for Classic Car Weekly. He
wrote about his bus this week, didn't he? Yeah. He's got 2 buses actually. So I'd rather he be saddled with the responsibility than me. But I'm really, really pleased people do keep those vehicles alive and well.
And, another thing that I was going to mention, which came to me when watching Car S.O.S, was actually when they when you see them, they take things off the vehicles. Like, for example, on the tractor, the Fergie, they had these large wheels with it. that weren't original. So they, I know they put them on something else, but sometimes they take things off, and you do wonder, do they give those pieces back?
Yeah, do you get them back, or
like we've replaced them, we've put this on instead? Or what was the other thing of the week? There was a guy who had, it was a lady with a Hillman Imp, and it had a roof rack. So where's that roof rack? Do they give them that back? Here's the parts we didn't fit. Here they are in a box of spares you can have and stick in your garage. So I do wonder where all those bits end up.
Sometimes you've got to think as well, the reason those parts aren't original. So say there's a sentimental part that's like, I don't know, a roof rack, for example, or a non-original radio where they've gone, like, my dear departed granddad fitted that to the car, it really has to stay. Do the people who ring up or write into Car S.O.S get to say, well, this, I'm doing up my dad's car, but this bit has to stay imperfect, or that dent, for instance, was caused by an accident that actually has become a family story, that kind of thing? Do you get to have a say in things like that, I wonder?
Maybe there's that going on in the background that you don't see, but I think if you're an enthusiast, you notice these things, and maybe you can look too closely. That actually what we've got to be thinking about, I suppose, is the fact that it's just a story being told on telly. It's just another TV show. But yeah, it does make you wonder sort of how much of that goes on in the background. If you look at social media, particularly if you look for Car S.O.S on social media, you can see quite a bit of restoration stuff that actually goes on behind the scenes, which they actually record, but don't actually put it out as part of the program. So that's worth checking out as well, actually. So yeah. So Tom, should we do this again?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think. Have you got anything coming up in Classic Car Weekly this next week or two?
I've got a couple of bits and bobs coming up this week. So without giving too much away, I'm just trying to think what I filed this week. Yes, there's something on the potential scrappage scheme being reintroduced when lockdown's over. So there's been a recommendation that this could be a way to sort of boost the industry, and I think we've been speaking to some classic car clubs about how to do that in a classic friendly way, if such a way exists.
Well, as I said at the start, I've got Auto MUNDIAL on ITV4 on Sunday morning this week, or ITV Hub after Sunday. And this Sunday's episode, I'm doing a piece about the history of General Motors, which we did on the show. And I've also got the police car going past. I've also got Motorsport MUNDIAL, which I do as well, which is whatever's remaining of motorsport happening in the world. That goes out on Sky Sports Mix on Tuesdays if you want to check that out. But yeah, motorsport-wise, there's nothing happening either. So we're catching up with the stuff which has happened previously. And also what we're finding on Auto MUNDIAL is there's not that many, of course, not many new cars to talk about, because the whole industry is kind of shut down, really. So it'll be interesting to see how things recover, because obviously it's hitting the new car world as well as classic car world as well. So, but yeah, so there's a quick shout out for that on Sunday, Auto MUNDIAL. So yeah, you haven't watched it yet, have you?
No, I will be doing that.
It's new cars anyway, so
yeah, that's it. Yeah, post 1990-ish. I'm pretty clueless, to be honest. So.
Yeah. Was that when you were born?
Not quite. 87 I was, so
87, I was on my second car in 1987. It was a 1978 Mini Clubman estate. That was what I had then in 1987. And then I bought a Mini City. That was my next car, and that took me to uni in the end of 87. So yeah, and you were in a pram.
When you were doing that, because I arrived into the world, my dad had to sell the TVR 3000S. So I'm sure I was. I'm sure I was quite popular in the early weeks of my life.
Yeah, that's always the way. Yeah, that's it. If you get married and you have kids, then say goodbye to classic cars. So anyway, right, saying goodbye to you now, Tom.
Goodbye. Thanks very much.
Right, cheers.
Cheers.